The artificial daylight of Nexus Station's common sector was beginning to dim, signaling the approach of the station's programmed night cycle. The massive trade hub orbiting the gas giant Helios served as the crossroads for a dozen species, though humans dominated its administration and security forces. Tazra stood in the shadows near a food dispensary, her amber eyes tracking the movement of station security. Her scaled skin, once a vibrant blue, had dulled to a pale cyan after weeks of malnutrition. The destruction of Valak's mining colony had left her, and the other survivors with nothing but the clothes they wore when the evacuation ships launched. "They're watching us again?" she whispered to her companions. "Third patrol this hour." Vel, the oldest of their small group, shifted her weight from one clawed foot to the other. Her gray-feathered crest lay flat against her skulla, sign of her exhaustion. "They want us gone, but where would we go? No transport will take passengers without credits." The third member of their group, Morrigan, gave a soft hiss through her translucent gills. Once a respected hydroponics engineer, now she was just another refugee with 4 arms and no future. "We need to find work before our temporary visas expire." 3 more days. Tazra watched as a human couple walked past, deliberately averting their eyes. It had been the same story at every service counter and hiring terminal they'd approached. No one wanted to employ aliens from a failed colony, especially ones from a world whose destruction was being blamed on improper management by non-human administrators. "Let's try the docking bays again," Tazra suggested, her voice low. "Cargo crews sometimes need extra hands for loading." They moved through the station corridors, keeping close to the walls. The further they got from the main concourse, the dimmer the lighting became. The maintenance and docking sections were utilitarian, lacking the polish of areas frequented by visitors and residents. A group of dock workers emerged from a bay, laughing among themselves. When they spotted the 3 aliens, their conversation halted. "Excuse me," Vel said, stepping forward with as much dignity as her weakened state allowed. "We're seeking employment." "Any position available? Station's full," one worker interrupted. "Especially of your kind. Colony failures should have stayed in their own system." Morrigan's lower arms clenched while her upper ones remained deliberately still. "Our colony was destroyed by an asteroid impact. We lost everything. Not my problem," the worker said as the group moved past them. Hours passed as they continued their search. By station midnight, they had been rejected at 17 different loading bays. Exhausted, they huddled in a maintenance alcove. "We should separate," Tazra said finally. "One refugee might find work where 3 cannot." Vel shook her head firmly. "The last survivors of Valak stay together. We promised." A shadow fell across them as someone approached. They tensed, expecting security or more hostile workers. Instead, a solitary human stood there. Average height, with dark hair pulled back in a short tail, and a face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. His cargo jacket was worn, but clean, with a patch reading "Read" over the breast pocket. "You 3 been following the loading crews all day," he said. It wasn't a question. Tazra rose to her feet, positioning herself between the human and her companions. "We're seeking employment." Humans studied them, his expression unreadable. "When did you last eat?" The question caught them off guard. Morrigan answered hesitantly. "Station rations 2 days ago. They've stopped serving non-citizens without credit verification." Without another word, the human reached into his pocket and pulled out 3 protein bars, tossing them over. Tazra caught them reflexively. "Eat," he said, "then we'll talk." They devoured the food, watching him warily. When they finished, he spoke again. "Name's Dominic Reed, independent cargo hauler. My ship's the Sparrow in Bay 42. He paused. "Need help with a shipment. Loading tonight, departing tomorrow. 1 job, 1 payment, food and temporary shelter included." "Why help us?" Vel asked, her voice laden with suspicion. Dominic's face remained impassive. "Got cargo to move. Need hands? Simple as that." Tazra pressed. "After that, depends on how well you work," he replied, already turning to leave. "Bay 42, 1 hour. Come or don't." After he disappeared around a corner, The three refugees exchanged glances. "It could be a trap," Morgan said. "Or it could be food and shelter when we have neither," Vel countered. Tazra stared down the corridor, where the human had gone. "We have nothing to lose and everything to gain." 1 hour later, they stood outside Bay 42, where a small cargo vessel was docked. The name Sparrow was stenciled on its hull in faded letters. Dominic Reed was waiting by the loading ramp, his face as expressionless as before. "You came," he said simply. "There's work to do." The interior of the Sparrow was cramped, but meticulously maintained. Dominic led the three refugees through narrow corridors lined with secured cargo crates. The ship smelled of metal polish and recycled air, a stark contrast to the artificial garden scents pumped through Nexus Station's public areas. "Sleeping quarters," Dominic said, gesturing to a small room with 4 bunks built into the wall. "Storage underneath. Galley is 1 level up. Bathroom facilities at the end of this corridor." Tazra noted how he spoke clipped sentences, no wasted words. His eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, as if assessing for threats or inefficiencies. "What cargo are we handling?" she asked. "Medical supplies. Bound for the mining outpost on Praxis 9. He handed each of them a tablet. "Inventory lists. Need to verify every item before departure. Station's been known to shortchange independent." Hallersville examined her tablet, her crest rising slightly in surprise. "These are organized by storage requirements, not content categories." Dominic nodded. "You notice details? Good." It wasn't quite praise, but Vel straightened nonetheless. The work began immediately. Morgan, with her 4 arms, proved especially efficient at scanning and sorting smaller containers. Vel's knowledge of chemical compounds helped identify potential storage conflicts. Tazra worked alongside Dominic, moving the heavier crates with a strength that belied her weakened state. After several hours, Dominic called a break. In the small galley, he prepared a simple but substantial meal. The refugees ate cautiously at first, then with increasing hunger. "Your ship is well maintained for an independent operator," Morgan observed, her gills flushing a healthier pink as she absorbed nutrients. "Been mine for 8 years, Dominic replied. "Is military before that?" "Human military," Azra asked. Watching his reaction carefully, Dominic's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Frontier defense. Until Caldera Prime." The name hung in the air. All 3 refugees recognized it, a border skirmish that had escalated into a full-scale battle. Battle between human forces and the Orzani Collective. Heavy losses on both sides. "You lost people," Vel said quietly, not a question. "An entire unit." Dominic's face remained impassive, but his knuckles whitened around his cup. 37 crew. Silence fell over the galley. Then Morgan spoke, her voice soft. "Valak's colony had 8,000 residents before the impact. 22 ships escaped, most headed for the nearest habitable worlds." She gestured to herself and her companions. "Our transport was damaged. We drifted for weeks before a trade vessel found us and brought us to Nexus, where no one wanted us," Tazra added. "Colonists are bad for business." Dominic studied them for a moment. "Failed implies you did something wrong. Your world was hit by an asteroid. The distinction is lost on most," Vel said bitterly. After the meal, they returned to work. The rhythm became easier, more coordinated. When Dominic gave instructions, they were followed without question. When one of the refugees made a suggestion about improving the loading process, Dominic considered it before implementing the change. By station morning, the cargo was loaded, secured, and triple-checked. All 4 were exhausted. "Rest," Dominic ordered. "We launch in 6 hours." In the cramped sleeping quarters, the 3 refugees spoke in whispers. "He's different from the others on the station," Morgan observed. "He's efficient," Tazra replied. "And he needed workers. Nothing more." "No," Vel said, her aged eyes thoughtful. "There's something else. Did you notice he gave us access codes to the ship's systems? Not full access, but enough that we could cause problems if we wanted." "He's testing us," Tazra realized. "Or trusting us," Morgan countered. "Perhaps a little of both." When launch time came, Dominic surprised them by assigning each a station on the bridge. Tazra at navigation, Vel monitoring life support, and Morrigan tracking cargo stability. "You've operated these systems before?" Vel asked, examining the familiar controls. "Different species, same principles," Dominic replied. He paused, then added, "And I can't run a ship this size alone. Not properly." The Sparrow detached from Nexus Station and accelerated toward the jump point. Tazra caught Dominic watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not quite trust, but perhaps the beginning of something like it. The stars stretched into lines as they entered hyperspace, leaving behind the station where they had found only rejection. Ahead lay uncertainty. But for the first time since Valex, they had purpose, and that Tazra thought. Watching the human pilot who had given them this chance was worth whatever risks might come. 3 days into their journey to Praxis 9, the routines aboard the Sparrow had settled into something resembling normality. Dominic ran a tight ship, all systems checked hourly, all maintenance performed on schedule, all meals taken together. In the small galley, he spoke little, but his few words carried weight. When Morrigan discovered a more efficient way to cycle the air filtration system, saving precious power, Dominic simply nodded and said, "Implement it."
Ow.
When Vel prepared a traditional Valexian stew from their limited supplies, his quiet good was received like high praise. Tazra found herself assigned to co-pilot duties more often than not. She had admitted to some experience with similar systems during her time in Valex's defense force, and Dominic had immediately begun training her on the Sparrow's controls. "The approach vector seems unusual," she commented as they plotted the final leg of their journey. Now, most ships would take a more direct route. "Most ships don't worry about raiders in this sector," Dominic replied, his fingers dancing across the navigation console. "Praxis 9 is remote, easy target. You've encountered them before?" A muscle twitched in Dominic's jaw. "Twice. Lost half a shipment the first time. Second time I was prepared." Tazra studied the route more carefully. "You're using the gas giants." "Radiation belt as cover." "Clever. Necessary," he corrected. The warning alarm blared before either could speak again. 3 ships had appeared on their sensors, approaching rapidly from the shadow of a nearby moon. "Raiders," Dominic confirmed, his voice suddenly sharp with command. "Battle stations." Vel and Morgan rushed to the bridge, taking their positions without question. The calm efficiency that had defined their work transformed into something more urgent but no less coordinated. "We're outgunned," Tazra reported, scanning the approaching vessels. "Interceptor class. Faster than us." Dominic's expression remained unchanged, but not smarter. "Morgan, prepare to vent Cargo Bay 3 on my mark." Vel, power surge to the rear deflectors, then immediate shutdown. Tazra, plot a course directly into the radiation belt, full burn. All 3 aliens exchanged glances, understanding forming between them. It was a desperate strategy. "The radiation will damage our systems," Vel warned. "Their ships are newer, more sensitive," Dominic countered. "They'll suffer worse." The raider ship split formation, attempting to surround the Sparrow. The lead vessel fired a warning shot across their bow. "They're transmitting," Morrigan reported. "Demanding we power down and prepare to be boarded." "Knowledge," Dominic ordered. "Tell them we're complying." Tazra's head snapped up in surprise, but she caught the glint in Dominic's eye and understood. As Morrigan sent the false surrender, the human pilot's hands flew over the controls, preparing their true response. "Now," he commanded, "Cargo Bay 3. Vented explosively, the escaping air propelling the Sparrow into a spin." Simultaneously, Vel triggered the power surge and shutdown, making the ship appear disabled. As the raiders closed in, confident in their victory, Dominic reactivated all systems and engaged the main engines. The Sparrow shot toward the radiation belt like a bullet. "They're pursuing," Tazra reported, watching the sensors. "All 3. Not them," Dominic replied grimly. The radiation hit like a physical force. Warning lights flooded the bridge as systems struggled against the onslaught. But behind them, the raider ships began to falter. "Their navigation is failing," Morgan reported, her gills fluttering with excitement. 2 ships turning back. The Third is still on us, Vel warned. And gaining, Dominic turned to Tazra. Take the helm. Without waiting for acknowledgement, he left his seat and rushed to the rear of the bridge. From a hidden compartment, he extracted what appeared to be a modified pulse cannon. Military upgrade, he explained, seeing their expressions. Not exactly licensed. He connected the device to an auxiliary power port. When I give the word, cut all non-essential systems and divert power here. The pursuing raider had closed. 2 firing range, their first shot rocked the Sparrow. Now, Dominic shouted. The lights dimmed as power flowed to the weapon. Dominic fired. The pulse hit the raider ship directly in its engine core. Not enough to destroy it, but enough to disable its primary systems. Get us out of the belt, Dominic ordered, returning to his seat. Tazra relinquished the controls, feeling a newfound respect for the human's tactical mind as they cleared the radiation and set course once more for Praxis 9. A strange atmosphere settled over the bridge. It wasn't just relief at their escape, but something more profound. We worked well together, Vel observed quietly. Dominic nodded. The closest thing to a smile they had seen touching his lips. We did. Looking at each of them in turn, he added, the Sparrow needs a crew. If you want to stay on after Praxis 9, there's work. The offer hung in the air, unexpected and life-changing. Ezra found herself speaking for all of them, except the return to Nexus Station came sooner than any of them had anticipated. After successfully delivering the medical supplies to Praxis 9, Dominic had secured a lucrative contract to transport specialized mining equipment back to the central hub. During the 2-week journey, the transformation aboard the Sparrow had been remarkable. What began as a tentative arrangement had evolved into something resembling a genuine crew. Dominic had begun teaching them the intricacies of ship operations, while they shared knowledge from their respective fields. Vel's experience as a chemical engineer proved invaluable in optimizing the fuel mixture, extending their range by nearly 15%. Morrigan's hydroponics expertise allowed them to establish a small fresh food garden in a repurposed storage compartment. Tazra's military background complemented Dominic's, leading to improved security protocols and defensive capabilities. But as the massive structure of Nexus Station appeared on their view screens, the mood aboard the Sparrow darkened. They won't have forgotten us, Morrigan said quietly as they prepared for docking procedures. Station security has likely flagged our IDs. Dominic's expression remained neutral. Your crew now? That changes things. Not officially, Tazra pointed out. We haven't been registered. We will be, Dominic replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. Docking proceeded smoothly until the final authorization check. The station's control officer requested visual confirmation of all personnel aboard. For crew members present, Dominic reported. Activating the visual feed to show all of them on the bridge, there was a long pause before the officer responded. Our records indicate the Sparrow as a single operator vessel. The 3 non-humans are not registered crew. That's being rectified today, Dominic stated firmly. Another pause. Please hold your position. Security personnel are being dispatched to your location. The communication ended. Vel's crest flattened against her skull. They're coming to remove us, she said. Dominic stood from his chair. No, they're not. When the security team arrived at Docking Bay 42, they found Dominic waiting alone at the foot of the Sparrow's ramp. His stance was relaxed but alert, reminiscent of his military days. Captain Reed, the lead officer, addressed him. We need to inspect your vessel for unauthorized passengers. No unauthorized passengers, Dominic replied evenly. It's just my crew. The officer consulted his tablet. Your ship is registered for a single operator. Any additional personnel must have proper documentation and work permits, which is why I'm here to file the necessary paperwork. Dominic held out a data chip. Crew registration forms, completed and ready for processing. The officer made no HMZ no move to accept it. These aliens were previously identified as refugees from Valak's colony. Their temporary visas have expired. They are to be detained pending deportation. They are skilled workers contracted to my vessel, Dominic countered, his voice hardening. Under Interstellar Commerce Regulation 47B. Independent operators may register essential personnel regardless of origin, provided they meet skill requirements and pass security screening. A flicker of uncertainty crossed the officer's face. That regulation is rarely invoked. But still valid, came a new voice. Tazra descended the ramp to stand beside Dominic, followed by Vel and Morrigan. All three wore the same cargo jackets as their captain, with newly added sparrow patches. "We survived the destruction of our world," Tazra continued, meeting the officer's gaze directly. "We survived being abandoned at this station. We survived a raider attack that would have claimed your supply shipments too. Praxis 2-9. We are not a security threat. We are an asset." The officer looked between them, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he extended his hand for the data chip. "I'll submit this to administration. No guarantees it will be approved. It will be," Dominic said with quiet certainty. "Because the next shipment of atmospheric regulators for the station's residential sector is on my manifest. Delays would be ... unfortunate." Understanding dawned on the officer's face. With a curt nod, he departed with his team. "That was a risk," Vel observed once they were alone. "Calculated," Dominic replied. "This station needs independent haulers more than they admit." "And if they refuse?" Morrigan asked. Dominic looked at each of them in turn. "Then we find another hub. There are stations throughout the sector that would welcome a reliable crew, regardless of species." The simple statement carried enormous weight. For the first time since losing their home, the three refugees realized they had options and someone willing to stand with them. 3 days later, her crew registration was approved, with a notation citing exceptional circumstances. No one mentioned the coincidental timing with the delivery of those crucial atmospheric regulators, as they prepared for departure on their next run. Tazra found Dominic in the cargo bay, inspecting the latest shipment. "You risked your standing?" "Here," she said. "Your business relationships." "Why?" Dominic continued his inspection for a moment before answering. "After Caldera Prime, I thought working alone was safer. No attachments, no losses." He looked up at her. "I was wrong. The ship needs a crew, not just for efficiency, but for purpose." It was the most he had ever revealed of himself at once. Tazra nodded, understanding what remained unsaid. "Where to next, Captain?" 6 months after their confrontation with Nexus Station Security, Sparrow had developed a reputation as one of the most reliable independent cargo vessels in the sector. Their efficiency in delivering crucial supplies through raider-prone areas had earned them premium contracts and the grudging respect of station administrators. The crew had settled into their roles with a harmony that belied their different species and backgrounds. Dominic remained the quiet, focused captain, but his commands now often came with brief explanations or, occasionally, the ghost of a smile. Tazra had become the official first officer, her tactical mind complementing his experience. Vel managed engineering and life support with meticulous precision, while Morrigan split her time between communications and tending the now-thriving hydroponics garden. They were completing a routine maintenance cycle at a smaller outpost when Morrigan intercepted a transmission that changed everything. "Captain," she called from her station, her gills pulsing rapidly, a sign of agitation. "I've detected a coded signal on the old Valix emergency frequency." The bridge fell silent as she played the message. It was fragmented, distorted by distance and interference, but unmistakably a distress call using Valexian colonial protocols. "Location?" Dominic asked immediately. "Processing now," Morrigan replied, her 4 hands working across multiple interfaces. "It's coming from Helio 6, a mining asteroid near the outer rim. It's controlled by the Kral Consortium," Tazra noted, her expression darkening. "They're known for exploiting refugee labor." Vel's crest rose in alarm. "You think they have Valexians?" "Only one way to find out," Dominic said. Already plotting a course, the journey to Helio 6 took 3 days of hard burning, pushing the Sparrow's engines to their limits. They approached under the guise of a supply run, transmitting falsified credentials that Tazra had crafted based on intercepted commercial codes. What they discovered confirmed their worst fears. In a hidden section of the mining facility, they found 27 Valexian refugees working in conditions that bordered on slavery. Security was minimal, The Krau consortium relied on isolation and the refugees' lack of options rather than armed guards. On the Sparrow's bridge, the crew debated their next move. "We can't leave them," Vel insisted, her age-softened voice suddenly hard. "The Sparrow can't transport that many," Tazra countered. "And a direct confrontation would be noticed. The consortium has influence at multiple stations, including Nexus." Morrigan added grimly. Dominic had remained silent throughout the exchange, studying the facility's schematics they had managed to download. Now he spoke, his voice carrying the same calm certainty they had come to trust. "We won't confront them. We'll outmaneuver them." He pointed to a section of the asteroid. "The consortium operates with minimal oversight because no one checks their labor practices. If evidence of their operation reached Union authorities, they'd be forced to improve conditions or shut down," Tazra finished, seeing his plan. "But the refugees would still be trapped," Vel objected. "Not if we give them another option," Dominic said. He switched the display to show a star chart. "There's an abandoned terraforming station in the Cygnus Reach. Union survey teams determined it was too costly to develop further, but its life support systems are still functional." Morrigan's gills flushed with excitement. "With my hydroponics knowledge and Vel's engineering skills, we could make it self-sufficient." "A new colony," Tazra breathed, "built by survivors." The plan took shape quickly. Using their legitimate cargo contracts as cover, they began transporting supplies to the abandoned station. Dominic leveraged his military contacts to ensure the evidence of the consortium's practices reached the right Union officials. Tazra developed extraction routes that would appear as normal shift changes at the mining facility. 1 month later, they implemented the final phase. As Union inspectors descended on Helio 6, creating the perfect distraction, Sparrow and 2 other independent vessels that Dominic had recruited extracted all 27 Valexians. The journey to Cygnus Reach was tense, their vessels overloaded and vulnerable. But when they arrived at the station, something unexpected awaited them. Word had spread through refugee networks, and other survivors from Valix had made their way there, nearly 60 in total. As they approached the docking bay, Vel gasped. At the site, the once abandoned station now displayed a newly painted name across its main hall: New Valix. Inside, they found the early arrivals had already begun establishing living quarters and community spaces. The station was far from luxurious, but it hummed with something that had been missing since their world's destruction: hope. A welcoming committee greeted them as they disembarked. Among them was an elderly Valexian with ceremonial markings identifying him as a colony elder. "We heard what you did at Nexus Station," he told Dominic. "How you stood against their prejudice. How you gave these 3 a place when no one else would." He gestured to Tazra, Vel, and Morrigan. "Now you have given all of us a chance to rebuild." Dominic shifted uncomfortably under the praise. "They did the real work?" "No," Tazra said firmly. "Did it together." As the refugees settled into their new home, the crew of the Sparrow helped establish critical systems and train operators. When it was time to depart for their next cargo run, Dominic paused at the airlock. "We'll return with more supplies," he promised, "and spread word to any other survivors we find." The elder nodded gratefully. "You and your crew will always have a home here." Back aboard the Sparrow, as they prepared to launch, Morrigan asked the question that had been on all their minds. "Do we tell them about the other colonies we've heard rumors of? The ones that might have more survivors?" Dominic looked at each of his crew members, no longer refugees, but family in all but name. "We do more than tell them," he said. "We find them." As the Sparrow pulled away from New Valix, setting course for the next delivery run that would fund their real mission, Tazra watched the stars through the view screen. Each point of light represented possibility, other survivors waiting to be found, other lives to be reclaimed from the void. From discarded to essential, Vel murmured beside her. "Who would have thought?" Dominic did, Tazra replied softly. From the first day at the food stall, Sparrow accelerated into the darkness, carrying its crew toward whatever challenges awaited. But unlike before, they faced the future not as desperate survivors, but as something far stronger, a family forged in the cold of space. bound by something more powerful than the gravity of any lost world. And somewhere behind them, on a station that had once been abandoned, the first new constellation of a shattered people began to shine.